Have you seen the massive glut of like inauthentic signal boosting for Haley Stevens lately? Like the shilling? Like a huge wave of liberal blue checks with like the same rhetoric. It was she's growing on me and she's authentic. Yeah, the she's growing on me shit is really, really, really fucking funny. So many people have done it too. And all the people who have done it too, I've noticed for some reason are like unwilling to directly lie about it. Like, I swear to God, I've seen like 5 different accounts say, apropos of nothing, out of nowhere, Haley Stevens, the world's least charming woman, is growing on me. And then, and by the way, we know that the PACs supporting Haley Stevens are paying influencers. We know this. So we know that this is like a thing that's being bought out. But then, like, rather than just lying and say they weren't paid to make those posts, they're like, do you really think I'd do that? But then not actually answer it. It's like they're afraid they're going to get in trouble for lying or something. You know what I mean? You know what I'm talking about? You're like, oh, wow, I guess the check cleared. And then they're like, wow, you really think I would do that? And then everyone answers yes, but they never explicitly say, no, I didn't do that. Never met a psyop they didn't like. Haley Stevens, the Unity candidate, is asked a question about Bernie Sanders and AOC and immediately says, like, essentially, I don't want progressives voting for me. Which makes sense because her job isn't actually to win the general. Like, it's okay if she loses the general to Rogers.
Of course, we do have this rally tomorrow with Sanders and AOC for your opponent. There are a lot of people in the Democratic Party that are looking for that progressive kind of movement.
Yeah.
How would you try to bring those people in?
I'm just curious if, Mr. Sanders is...
My point is that spamming defeatist sentiment 4 months before midterm that's critical to stopping the bleeding is probably unwise. A couple of pointers, really important. First of all, I don't think the midterm is critical to stopping the bleeding at all. I think that by and large, the processes that are bringing about the end of the country are happening no matter what. So I just flatly don't believe that. Second of all, I'm still an advocate for electoralism in the sense that it's important to have candidates who can direct the blame for the downfall appropriately. I've said that many times, you know? But the idea that I'm somehow like dampening support for these candidates by covering them and encouraging people to vote for them, I just don't think that makes any sense. What it seems to me like what you're advocating for is like enthusiasm uninformed by reality, or like an insincere analysis. Like I'm not supposed to say or acknowledge the fact that it's all over when it is. But that just seems like lying to me. I think if I never heard the word electoralism out of a leftist creator's mouth again, I'd be happy. So you just don't like things that make you sad. Okay, that kind of gives the game away a little bit, don't you think? You just don't like fundamental systemic critique. Like you want to, yeah, it's kind of a shut up and dribble bit, but you don't want to acknowledge that there might be some kind of fundamental problem here. You know what I'm talking about? Nah, it's okay. That's all right. I'll still drink that garbage.
Willing to acknowledge the great work that I did alongside President Obama on the auto rescue. You know, he had just himself gotten into the United States Senate, and I don't remember him being around for the auto rescue, but I certainly remember our sleeves being rolled up to save the 200,000 Michigan jobs, to stand up for working people and to do the right thing. And I'm also really proud of the record that I have. You know, I have been recognized as the most effective lawmaker for Michigan because I write laws and I pass laws and I make a difference. You know, I'm not in the complaining class of pointing fingers. I'm in the class of winning tough elections.
Doug, you're literally picking fights right now.
Of making sure someone like Mike Rogers in the state of Michigan here, this is a toss-up race. It is not a guarantee. And this is why it's frankly been so important that, you know, we go through a rigorous Democratic nominating process. We haven't seen Mike Rogers campaigning, but we have heard him saying that he wants to go to the U.S. Senate to rubber stamp Trump. He's not going to rubber stamp Michigan. He's not going to stand up for us when tariffs are wreaking havoc on our pocketbooks and our small businesses. He's not going to...
It's crazy that Mamdani has been directly asked, do you think that the Democratic Party has room for moderates and or Zionists? And he said unambiguously yes many, many times. But Haley Stevens is essentially asked like even an adjacent question about Bernie Sanders, and her immediate answer is like, fuck him, you know? Almost like she's not trying to win.
Of course, we do have this rally tomorrow with Sanders and AOC for your opponent. There are a lot of people in the Democratic Party that are looking for that progressive kind of movement.
Yeah.
How would you try to bring those people in?
I wouldn't. I would simply not.
I'm just curious if... Mr. Sanders is willing to acknowledge the great work that I did.
This is, it's such a non-answer, you know what I mean? It's not like, it's a crazy answer. It's an answer from a person who doesn't actually believe in campaigning, whose entire campaign and whose, you know, career in the House has been propped up by outsider spending. You know what I mean? Why should Bernie Sanders or AOC supporters vote for you? And her answer effectively is like, well, don't then, you know? It's an implicit answer. She disregards attracting progressive voters. Yeah, because that completes the cycle. Her job is to lose, right? Even if she wins, she loses. So she wants to attack progressives because her goal is for progressives to not vote for her. And if progressives don't vote for her, you get to have another, like, 2 years of, insincere, well, it's actually the left holding the party back bullshit. Like, she deliberately tries to underperform with these demographics so she can blame them if she loses. Which, funnily enough, if you think about it, might kind of be a contributing factor in the whole democracy is over thing, you know? If you have elected representatives who are backed up by so much money from special interests that they don't care if they win or not, it seems like kind of a foundational problem a little bit, in my humble opinion, you know? Like, if you're not even trying to win, it's not good. Oh, anyway.
Yes, we haven't seen Mike Rogers campaigning, but we have heard him saying that he wants to go to the U.S. Senate to rubber stamp Trump. He's not going to rubber stamp Michigan. He's not going to stand up for us when tariffs are wreaking havoc on our pocketbooks and our small businesses. He's not going to stand up when people are getting kicked off their health care and their utility bills just continue to go up and the billionaire class gets to run away with everything while we all pay more. He's not partnered with my friend Joe LaRussa, who's not even in necessarily a partisan role. But I work with my local leaders to...
So if Abdul kicks her ass in the polls, is she still going to fly this kite? Well, the funding that is backing her, the base of her power is going to effortlessly shift over to Rogers because her money comes from AIPAC and AIPAC supports Rogers. So one of the reasons why it's probably not good for both sides of the aisle to be funded by the same people a little bit, you know? And if she wins, it doesn't really matter whether she or Rogers wins, right? Like, same shit either way. Marginally more responsible stewardship of the empire doesn't necessarily, doesn't really fix the problems we're having right now. Eisengeisen, would you consider this to be a salient critique of electoralism from a leftist perspective, or do you think I should still shut up and dribble? Sorry, I'm being a little bit bitter about it, you know? But it's important. The fundamental critique is important. Sometimes I feel like there's a lot of social pressure to just like, oh, well, all you can really do is cover elections, you know? And even then, don't get too hard in the paint for the lefties or whatever. That's fine. I'm bitter too, clearly, Lamau. All men are brothers. Unless you're a woman or like non-binary or whatever, in which case, adapt the phrase to your needs. It's all good. Wouldn't it be better for Rogers to win over her so she doesn't become entrenched? I've got good news. A Senate seat, you hold it for 6 years. 6 years from now, we're going to live in a very different world. Won't matter by then. No, Laserizer. I've talked about how vanguard parties are self-defeating many times. I don't really believe in them. I genuinely think that a benevolent dictatorship is preferable to a vanguard party because a vanguard party masquerades as a vehicle for class consciousness when in reality it's the opposite. You could theoretically have a dictatorship of the proletariat that is an actual dictatorship. A single dictator isn't a class. They're not really a political class. They're just an autocrat. But if you create a vanguard party, you create a distinct political class, which has a lot of, unfortunate externalities attached to it. You know what I mean? I think that vanguard parties are just a more disingenuous way of fronting an autocratic society. Isn't dictatorship of the proletariat just a democracy? Well, it's a worker-led society. What causes the circumstances of a benevolent dictatorship? There's not many examples of it, but vanguard parties tend to turn out pretty badly too. Tito, maybe? I don't know. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Me, I'd be benevolent? Yeah, of course, obviously. Me. Thank you. Some council communists have made compelling arguments on the necessity of a party. Yeah, and like, that's great. So you're kind of like gesturing at it. Now, vanguard parties turn out terribly. They really do. Every vanguard party in the long run just turns into a privileged, distinct class of people who now occupy not only the economic but the political role that the bourgeoisie previously occupied. The Politburo in the Soviet Union, like every time this happens, you end up like reinforcing the same problems. I don't think that's the solution. A party's different from a vanguard party? Yes, there's a lot of particular ways it can plan out. I'm just talking about vanguard parties. It's not like it's going to happen anyway, you know? Don't worry about it. It's getting so nasty in Michigan. Not that we should expect anything else from a candidate like, Stevens, who's just a, like, AIPAC brick of money stretching out like a human skin suit. Jesus Christ, look at this. This is going to backfire, I have a feeling. I'm pretty sure Stevens is literally pulling ahead of Abdullah Sayed right now. Like, they just have such an unbelievable amount of money. PV is going to start phone banking for Abdul in 4 days on the 19th. Vaush, going to be daily. Good to hear. We'll see how it goes. That pollster was giga-biased. Look, we'll see. It's going to be a tight race, okay? Money can buy elections. If you don't think money can buy elections, it's kind of the problem here. I wish money couldn't buy elections. Money can't completely buy elections. Like, it's not a 100-0 kind of thing, right? But, it's, though it is worth noting that my understanding is that on average, Abdul Al-Sayed outperforms Rogers in the general. And there's not really any reason for AIPAC to keep supporting Stevens after if Stevens wins in the primary, because like they're fine with Rogers too. How much would you need to be paid to vote against your values? Me or her? What do you mean? She doesn't have any values. It's not like a moral qualm for her. It's so disgusting. And it's so revealing of how little Democrats, like the party of the DNC, not Democratic voters, how little they believe in democracy. Like, the fact that you can just do shit like this, like you can have an extremely tight, high-profile Senate race with an ungodly amount of spending from AIPAC, a group that supports insurrectionists and far-right fascists, that Haley Stevens has no ground game, no real positions, just a shell for money, but there's no real condemnation from the DNC. In fact, Stevens is getting institutional support. Neera Tanden's been openly supporting it. Yeah, but Neera Tanden has always been a liar. Neera Tanden has been like a Clintonite political operative for decades. She participated in smears against Obama, like led with the narrative that Obama was like a secret Muslim. She did a lot of race baiting back in 2008 because she's always been like a servant of Clinton, essentially. Like, that's the political camp she falls in. Like, she's never believed in democracy. She's always believed that her job is to manipulate voters into voting for candidates who don't actually support them. Like, she's against super PAC money, but she would rather an empty skin suit filled with AIPAC money win because Abdul Al-Sayed campaigned with Hassan Piker. Like, go own that fucking live streamer. Also, she misspelled Hassan Piker, which again shows you how much she actually cares. She's always at the scene of the crime when it comes to Dems rat fucking progressives. It's crazy because she gets ratioed with every fucking post. Like, nobody actually likes her, but she still has ungodly amounts of power because she says what the people in charge want to hear, and she works closely with people in power. Oh wait, here she is responding to that post. It's disgusting how people lie, hiding behind anonymity. Just lie on here. This total tweet is a lie. 1, I went on to work for Obama in the general election. Yeah, what were you doing during the primary? And was proud to work for him in his admin to pass healthcare. That's proof of you being, like, shifty. That's the point. 2, I was the policy director for Hillary's campaign. My role was developing her agenda. Like, she's not even countering the statement here. If I could figure out who this is, I'd consider suing for libel/slander. Zionists always do the same thing, man. Always. Oh, you're accurately covering my being a piece of shit. I should sue you. I don't believe in the First Amendment. Like, she crashes out on social media all the time. She's not, like, emotionally detached from what's going on, but it doesn't matter, you know? God, I hate her. She was the person who was going off about how progressives don't vet their candidates, but she worked for Bill Clinton, a close Epsteinite. Tanden has been regarded as a Clinton loyalist and a personal friend of Hillary Clinton, whose professional life has been significantly defined by her work with the Clintons. The New Republic has described Tanden as Hillary Clinton's closest policy advisor. Worked with Bill Clinton's campaign, close associate director for domestic policy in the Clinton White House, and domestic policy advisor in the First Lady's office. Just like non-stop, like years and years and years and years of working for the family, like a fucking butler. Jesus. Tanden was Hillary Clinton's policy director for Clinton's unsuccessful bid for 2008 presidential nomination. In a 2019 article, the New York Times cited a source claiming Tanden punched Think Progress website editor and future Bernie Sanders campaign manager Faiz Shakir in the chest for asking Clinton about her Iraq war vote. Tanden later insisted she had not slugged him but had pushed him. So even by her version of events, she shoved somebody in the chest for asking Clinton about her vote in favor of the Iraq war. Fucking freak. Center for American Progress, blah-de-blah, Biden administration, da-de-da. Tanden has been described by the Washington Post as a progressive. Oh yeah, I'm sure. Important to remember regarding Michigan polling people have been doomering about. Yes, I know, but that doesn't necessarily mean this is always going to be the case. It's not about doomering. You should all support Abdul Al-Sayed with every fiber of your being. He's a good guy and he's up against, like, a uniquely bad Democrat. Haley Stevens is not just a regular bad Democrat. Haley Stevens is a uniquely bad Democrat, a shockingly bad Democrat, even by the standards of liberal Democrats. It's the reason why her campaigning has no ground game and she has to lie nonstop via implication in her ads. She's as bad as Chuck Schumer. She might be worse. That's a high bar. I'd say so. Apparently on Facebook, people are really pro-Abdul. I don't know if that's like a quantifiable statement.
Michigan's race for U.S. Senate on the Democratic side is a dead heat right now. This is according to a new WDIV Detroit News poll. But there is a key factor that could play into either Haley Stevens or Abdul El-Sayed grabbing that 9% of undecided voters. When asked if an endorsement from Governor Gretchen Whitmer would make a difference, 63% said it wouldn't and 34% said it would. But pollster Richard Zuba found that when it came to those still on the fence, this could be a game changer.
We specifically
Gretchen Whitmer probably wouldn't support Abdul El-Sayed because she's like a huge sellout.
wanted to know if it would impact undecided voters. And frankly, a Governor Whitmer endorsement in this race would have a big impact on that 9.5% of undecided voters. 50% of them said they would be more likely to vote for a candidate Governor Whitmer endorsed. 25% would be much more likely. So at 9.5%, that's 5% of the vote right there that is motivated or would be swayed by a Whitmer endorsement one way or another.
Our poll also found that the narrative that Gaza, Israel, and Middle East issues are important to Michigan voters is wildly overblown. On a scale of 1 to 10, Zuba says voters rank it at a 5.6, meaning
That's pretty important. Like that's pretty high up, I feel. I mean, because we're not dealing in averages. That means that for a significant percentage of the population, like let's do the math here, 6, 7, 14, 20, 30. So for 70% of the population, they rate it at a 5 or above. I mean, that means it's important to them, right? I don't understand what the point is of like misrepresenting the data here to imply that no one cares. Are we really going to do this now? Like, it was one thing to do it back in 2024, but now? Sheesh.
The race for the Democratic nomination for Michigan's U.S. Senate seat is a dead heat.
that's right,
I wouldn't go higher than the 8 personally. I mean, it's, again, I feel like a lot of people's, I don't want to be like misinterpreted or whatever. I don't think that Israel, Gaza, Palestine is a like #1 issue for me because of Israel and Gaza. I think that at the end of the day, like domestic affairs should be prioritized when it comes to the importance of voting for American candidates, because that's ultimately what's going to decide their effectiveness, what they're capable of doing, and their support. But support for Israel is far more than just a foreign policy decision. It's not just like a coin flip, you know? Like support for the Iraq War is not just a foreign policy decision. It's a litmus test for a wide range of beliefs and policies. The Iraq War wasn't just like a flash in the pan. It wasn't just like a dalliance, unrelated to your general opinions or whatever. It was quite literally, like, at least in the modern context, kind of the downfall of America's international relations, our standing with the world, contribute instability to the Middle East, which has now led us to this moment right now where the world stands on the precipice of a global oil crisis. There are so many interconnected issues. Not that I would expect American voters to understand this, you know? Not always a perfect litmus test, Masaigu, but it's still a pretty good one. What, Masaigu? That's a dumb argument. A litmus test doesn't work because some people who we don't like fell on the right side of it. I don't think that works. There are people who are pro-Palestine who are like crazy campus. That doesn't mean it's a bad litmus test.
DIV Detroit News poll shows Haley Stevens and Abdul El-Sayed virtually tied when it comes to committed voters. But as Jason Colthorpe shows us, it's the likely voters that are favoring one over the other.
When Mallory McMorrow dropped out of the race, the thinking was it would help the traditional Democratic establishment throw its weight behind Haley Stevens. And almost immediately we saw Attorney General Dana Nessel endorse her, and Senator Gary Peters soon followed. But interestingly, pollsters have seen Mallory McMorrow's voters are evenly split to the 2 remaining candidates.
First, our sources. The poll was put into the field by the Glenn Gariff Group and pollster Richard Zuba. He surveyed 500 likely 2026 Democratic primary voters by phone starting July 8th, 3 days after McMorrow dropped out of the race. Here's what the voters are saying. 34.1% are definitely voting for Stevens.
Jesus Christ, this is quite a split for definitely.
33.7% are definitely voting for El-Sayed. A virtual tie, but a little deeper, and you see a gap. 14.1% will probably vote for Stevens, while 7.7% will probably vote for El-Sayed. Juba says that is a key difference.
What is really important here is the softness and the volatility in this electorate yet. 31% of voters could shift their position yet in the last 3 weeks.
Guess on phone banking, I cannot overstate the importance of either directly with the campaign or through PV phone banking for Abdul al-Sayed, or canvassing if you're there.
That's an extraordinary number. It shows a very highly volatile race here that, frankly, I think goes either way at this stage.
The answer to another question could also help Stevens if you believe the old guard Democrats who are desperately trying to stave off progressive candidates like el-Sayed. The top two factors given for choosing the Democratic nominee were someone willing to stand up to Donald Trump and a candidate who can win in November against Mike Rogers.
On both of those issues, we see Haley Stevens with a 20-point lead on standing up to Trump and a 17-point lead with those voters who say they need to beat Mike Rogers. The flip of that, 19% of voters, they are voting for a candidate who represents their values. And on that one, Abdul al-Sayed has a 27% lead. He is by far winning the value voters.
If there is a win for el-Sayed in this poll, it's this. He leads slightly over Stevens in both how voters view the candidates favorably and
also, importantly, he leads over Rogers. Remember, there's still going to be a tough general after the primary, but nobody even mentions that, you know? Nobody even fucking talks about that. Well, whatever. I guess we'll see how it goes.